Picture this. You're walking through your garden on a warm morning, coffee in hand, and everything looks beautiful. The corn is tall. The tomatoes are climbing. The squash is sprawling across the bed like it owns the place. And it does look like success. It really does. But underneath all that green abundance, something else is happening. Something you can't see from the surface. The soil is changing. Slowly, quietly, in ways that won't announce themselves until a season or two from now. When your yields drop for no obvious reason. When your plants start struggling despite the same care you've always given them. When you notice the earth has gone from dark and crumbly to pale and hard and strangely lifeless. I've been there. I've stood in that exact spot, looking at a thriving garden on the surface, and wondering why the magic seemed to be leaving. Here's the thing nobody tells you up front. Some of the most popular crops in the world, the ones every gardener and farmer grows without a second thought, have the quiet potential to strip your soil bare if you're not managing them with a specific kind of awareness. Not because the crops themselves are bad, but because of how they're grown, how often they're grown, and what gets left behind or taken away when they're harvested. What I'm about to share changed how I plan every single season, and I think once you see this you won't be able to unsee it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. 1. Corn. Let's start with the big one. Corn is one of the most widely grown crops on Earth, and for good reason. It feeds billions of people. It's productive, it's versatile, and it will quietly wreck your soil if you grow it the same way year after year. I grew corn in the same beds for almost a decade before I understood what I was actually doing. The yields kept creeping down, and I kept adding more fertilizer, thinking I just needed to feed the soil more. I was treating the symptom, not the cause. Here's what corn actually does. It's what agronomists call a heavy feeder. It pulls enormous amounts of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium from the soil in a single season. But the deeper problem isn't just nutrient depletion. It's structural. Corn roots are dense and fibrous, and when you harvest the whole plant and remove the stalks, you're taking away the organic matter that would naturally return to the soil. Year after year, that extraction adds up. In the Oaxacan valleys of Mexico, traditional Zapotec farmers have grown corn for thousands of years without destroying their soil. The difference is the system. They use the milpa, a planting method that pairs corn with beans and squash. The beans fix nitrogen into the soil that the corn has consumed. The squash shades the ground and retains moisture. The stalks are chopped and returned to the earth as organic matter. It's not just companion planting. It's a closed-loop soil economy. The science behind it is clear. Monoculture corn depletes nitrogen at a rate that bare soil cannot recover from on its own. But when nitrogen-fixing legumes are grown alongside it, atmospheric nitrogen gets converted by root bacteria and deposited directly into the soil. The mechanism is called biological nitrogen fixation, and it's essentially free fertility if you work with it. Grow corn alone, year after year, with nothing returned to the soil, and watch it hollow out beneath you. 2. Wheat. Wheat feeds more people than any other crop on the planet. It's also one of the great soil exhausters when it's grown at scale, without intelligent management. The problem with wheat isn't just what it takes, it's what it leaves, or doesn't leave. Conventional wheat farming involves harvesting the grain, baling the straw, and leaving bare soil exposed through the off-season. No cover, no roots in the ground, nothing to feed the microbiome between seasons. Soil scientists have a term for this: biological dormancy. When soil has nothing alive in it, no roots releasing exudates, no fungi threading through it, no decomposing organic matter, the microbial community collapses. And microbes are not background noise. They are the actual engine of soil fertility. Farmers in the Punjab region of India, before the Green Revolution shifted practices, traditionally followed wheat with a short-cycle legume or a soil-resting fallow. Not because they had access to agricultural research, because they'd watched their land closely for generations and understood that wheat asked a lot and needed something given back. The modern fix is simple, but requires intention. Don't leave wheat ground bare. Seed a cover crop immediately after harvest. Winter rye, crimson clover, or a legume mix will keep roots in the soil, feed the microbiome, and fix nitrogen while you wait for the next season. The difference in soil structure after 2 or 3 years of doing this is something you have to see to believe. 3. Potatoes. This one surprised me. I loved growing potatoes. Easy, reliable, satisfying in a way that few other crops match. But potatoes are one of the most aggressive soil structure disruptors you can plant. And most home gardeners have no idea. The damage happens in 2 ways. First, potatoes are heavy feeders. They demand large amounts of potassium and phosphorus, and they'll pull those reserves down fast in soil that isn't actively being replenished. Second, the harvesting process itself is destructive. Digging up an entire bed, turning the soil repeatedly, breaking up aggregates. Every time you do this, you're damaging the underground architecture that took years of biology to build. Traditional Andean farmers in Peru, who have cultivated more potato varieties than anywhere else on Earth, never planted potatoes more than once every 3 to 7 years in the same plot. Not because they had too much land, because they understood through centuries of observation that the potato demands a long recovery window. The scientific mechanism here involves soil aggregate stability. Healthy soil is not just dirt. It's a web of fungal threads, bacterial glues, and organic particles that bind together into stable clumps that hold air and water. Repeated digging destroys those aggregates. And once you break that structure, water runs off instead of soaking in, nutrients leach away instead of staying available, and the soil turns compacted and hostile. Rotate your potatoes. Always. And wait longer than you think you need to. 4. Sunflowers. Here's one that almost nobody talks about. Sunflowers seem like the perfect crop. They're beautiful. They attract pollinators. They produce valuable seeds and oils. And they have a dark side that took me years to notice. Sunflowers are allelopathic. That is the technical term for a plant that releases chemicals into the soil that suppress the growth of other plants, including the crops you might want to follow them with. The compounds are called allelopathins, and sunflowers produce them in their roots, their leaves, and their seed hulls. If you compost sunflower hulls from a bird feeder and dig that compost into your beds, you may notice poor germination for weeks. That's not coincidence. A traditional practice among Kazakh steppe farmers involves never following sunflowers immediately with a sensitive crop like lettuce, spinach, or small-seeded herbs. Instead, they follow with a robust grain or a nitrogen fixer that can tolerate allelopathic residue. This practice was passed down not with scientific language, but with observed results over many generations. The fix is patience and awareness. After a sunflower crop, give the soil a full season with a robust cover crop before planting anything sensitive. The allelopathic compounds break down, but they need time and microbial activity to do it. This next one surprises almost every gardener who hears it the first time. 5. Tobacco. Tobacco belongs in this list, not because most home gardeners grow it, but because the lesson it teaches applies broadly. Tobacco is one of the most exhausting crops in the world. It demands enormous amounts of nitrogen, potassium, and magnesium. It's also highly susceptible to pathogens, which means the soil beneath it tends to accumulate disease pressure year after year. But the deeper issue is what tobacco farming historically did to land. In colonial Virginia and the Carolinas, plantation-era tobacco farming stripped entire landscapes bare within a few decades. Fields were simply abandoned when they stopped producing. No rotation, no replenishment, just extraction, until nothing was left. The contrast comes from indigenous tobacco growers in the Amazon basin, where tobacco was grown in small, intentional patches rotated through the forest garden. The scale was modest, the rotation was long, and the soil never experienced the kind of collapse that commercial monoculture created. The principle generalizes. Any crop that is highly extractive and disease-prone needs longer rotations, diverse neighbors, and meaningful organic matter returned to the soil. Otherwise, it becomes a machine for converting soil fertility into product, and eventually, into nothing. 6. Cotton. Cotton has a nickname in agricultural circles, white gold, but there's another name that some soil scientists use informally, the soil killer. Cotton requires aggressive irrigation, heavy fertilization, and repeated tillage. In conventional production, the soil beneath a cotton field is often treated as a substrate, a medium to hold the roots, rather than a living ecosystem. Fumigants are applied to kill soil pathogens. Synthetic fertilizers replace biological fertility. And the result, over time, is soil that cannot function without constant chemical input. Traditional cotton farmers in the Nile Delta cultivated cotton in strict rotation with clover, specifically berseem clover, a nitrogen fixer that had been part of Egyptian agriculture for thousands of years. The clover was not just a rotation crop, it was a soil restoration tool built into the farming calendar. The mechanism is layered. Clover's deep taproot breaks compaction. Its nitrogen-fixing nodules replenish what cotton took. Its biomass, when chopped and incorporated, feeds the microbial community. Egyptian farmers didn't have soil science textbooks. They had generations of close observation. And they got the same answer. If you grow cotton or advise someone who does, berseem clover in rotation is not optional. It's the soil contract that makes the whole system sustainable. 7. Soybeans. Soybeans are nitrogen fixers, which makes them sound like they should improve the soil. And they can. Under the right management, they genuinely do. But here is the part that gets left out of the conversation. Soybeans fix nitrogen, but they also consume a large portion of what they fix before they return it to the soil. The net nitrogen gain depends heavily on variety, inoculant quality, harvest timing, and what happens to the residue. In conventional large-scale soy production, the beans are harvested, the stover is often removed or burned, and the fields are tilled. What remains is a soil that gave more than it received. Farmers in the Cerrado region of Brazil, before intensive agriculture transformed the landscape, grew soybeans in mosaic systems that included native grasses and leguminous shrubs. The diversity kept the soil food web active between crops and prevented the kind of structural decline that monoculture soy produces over time. The practical lesson for any scale: always leave soybean residue on the soil surface. Never remove it. The decomposing material feeds fungi and bacteria that maintain soil structure. And inoculate your seeds with the correct Bradyrhizobium strain. Without it, the nitrogen fixation you're counting on may not happen at all. 8. Sugarcane. Sugarcane is one of the most productive crops on Earth in terms of raw biomass. It's also one of the most soil damaging when grown with conventional methods. The combination of heavy irrigation, compaction from machinery, burning of residue, and minimal rotation creates soils that are structurally degraded and biologically depleted within a surprisingly short period. The burning issue is critical. In many sugarcane regions, fields are burned before harvest to remove the leaf litter. It's efficient, it's fast, and it destroys the surface biology that makes soil function. In Barbados and parts of Jamaica, traditional cane farmers practiced what they called trash mulching, leaving the leaf litter on the soil surface after harvest rather than burning it. The organic blanket protected the soil from the intense tropical sun, retained moisture, and fed the microbial community. Yields held steady. The soil didn't collapse. The science is straightforward. Burning volatilizes the nitrogen in residue, turning it into gas and releasing it into the atmosphere. Mulching returns that nitrogen to the soil through decomposition. The difference in nitrogen retention over a 10-year period between burning and mulching is dramatic. Some studies suggest a loss of up to 60% of nitrogen available in residue when burning versus returning it to the soil. Don't burn, mulch. It's slower. It's worth it. 9. Tomatoes. I debated putting tomatoes on this list because I know how much people love them, but the truth belongs here. Tomatoes are heavy feeders and disease magnets. They deplete calcium and magnesium rapidly. They're prone to soil-borne pathogens, fusarium wilt, verticillium wilt, early blight, that build up in the soil every time you plant in the same spot. And because most gardeners love tomatoes so much, they tend to plant them in the same beds every single year. I did this for almost 15 years. The same raised beds, the same corner of the garden. I kept buying more fertilizer, more amendments, treating for disease after disease. I was fighting the soil instead of working with it. Farmers in the Campania region of southern Italy, where some of the world's most prized tomatoes are grown, traditionally rotated tomatoes on a 4-year cycle. 4 years in one spot, then 4 years somewhere else. The soil had time to clear pathogens, rebuild organic matter, and recover its biological balance before tomatoes returned. The pathogen buildup mechanism is well documented. Soil-borne fungi and bacteria that cause wilt diseases reproduce rapidly when their preferred host is present. Remove the host for several seasons, and the pathogen population collapses. Return to the host after a long break, and the soil is clean. 4 years feels long. It feels like too long, until you understand what you're actually doing. And then it feels like the only thing that makes sense. 10. Brassicas. Last on the list, but not least. Brassicas, which includes cabbage, broccoli, kale, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and mustard, are some of the most popular vegetables in any garden. They're also consistent soil clubroot factories when grown too frequently in the same ground. Clubroot is a soil-borne pathogen, Plasmodiophora brassicae, that attacks brassica roots and forms grotesque, club-shaped growths. Once it's in your soil, it can survive for up to 20 years without a host. 20 years. Without disappearing. The spores are microscopic. They travel on boots, on tools, on water, and they thrive in soil that is frequently planted with their preferred hosts. Traditional market gardeners in northern France, particularly in the Île-de-France region, where brassica cultivation has been documented for centuries, followed brassicas with a minimum 3-year break and always balanced soil pH above 7.0 before replanting. The pH strategy is based on the fact that clubroot thrives in acidic conditions. Raise the pH with lime, and you create an environment where the pathogen struggles to complete its life cycle. The broader lesson for all brassicas: rotate them just as aggressively as you rotate tomatoes. 3 years minimum. Test and adjust your pH, and never compost clubroot-infected material. It goes in the bin or the fire, not back into your garden. Now here is what most people do with heavy-feeding crops like corn, potatoes, and tomatoes. They plant them in the same spot every season, add fertilizer when yields drop, and treat each problem as an isolated issue rather than a systemic one. Here is what works better. Treat rotation as non-negotiable. not as a nice-to-have, as the foundation of everything. Rotate your heavy feeders every season. Follow them with a restorative crop, a legume, a cover crop, a green manure. Give your soil a reason to recover. Most people think of soil as the backdrop for their plants. The successful traditional farmers, the Zapotec milpa growers, the Andean potato cultivators, the Egyptian cotton farmers, thought of soil as the main character. Everything they planted was chosen in relation to what the soil needed, not just what the market wanted. Most people remove crop residue because it looks cleaner. What works better is returning it to the soil in whatever form makes sense: chopped, mulched, composted. Residue is not wasted. It is deferred fertility. Most people respond to soil problems with inputs: more fertilizer, more amendments, more products. What works better is removing the cause of the problem, usually a rotation mistake, and letting biology do the recovery work that biology is designed to do. This week, pick the one crop on this list that you grow most often. Pull out whatever notes you have on where you've planted it over the last 3 seasons. If it's been in the same spot, or close to the same spot, 2 years in a row, make the decision right now about where it will go next season. You don't have to redesign your entire garden. You just have to move one crop. That single shift, made consistently across several seasons, is how soil goes from depleting to building. Here is my question for you. Which crop on this list have you been planting in the same spot the longest? And what happened to your soil when you finally moved it? Leave your answer below. I read every single one. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.